Hello. Thank you for visiting the Other Woman and Man Stories channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And here we go. John proposed to Carol on her 27th birthday. He had carefully planned this day, rented a beautiful convertible, bought a bouquet of 27 red roses, the number of years of his beloved, and took her on a romantic picnic by the picturesque lake outside the city. Carol was delighted with this trip. And at sunset, when the sky was painted in pink and purple tones, John got down on one knee at the very edge of the water, took out a small velvet box with an engagement ring from his pocket, and uttered those cherished words. "Will you marry me?" Carol burst into tears of happiness and rushed to hug him with a joyful yes. She had been waiting for this moment for so long. She was the only one of all her girlfriends who was still single, and it upset her greatly. John's appearance in her life changed everything. Already as a husband, John insisted that Carol change jobs. He didn't like that she wasn't appreciated at her previous workplace. No pay raises, denied vacations, and forced to work overtime. Carol felt awkward about leaving and letting down the people she had worked with for several years. But John persuaded her to try herself in a new field. And indeed, at the new place, at a marketing agency, Carol really liked it. The team was young and friendly, the work was interesting and creative, and the salary was twice as much as the previous one. She ceaselessly thanked her husband for pushing her to take this important step. Carol had been working at this agency for 3 years since its inception, and this year, the management decided to celebrate the company's 3-year anniversary in a big way. Rented a banquet hall at an expensive restaurant, invited live music, and ordered exquisite menus. Even bosses from the head office were supposed to come to the celebration. At work, in the last week, all the women could only discuss the outfits, hairstyles, and makeup in which they would shine at this party. Carol didn't want to stand out with anything extravagant, but looking boring wasn't part of her plan either. So after work, she went shopping with her best friend to find the perfect dress for the event. After a long search and many try-ons, they found a soft pink dress that fit Carol's figure perfectly. At home, she proudly paraded in front of her husband in a new outfit, but John, immersed in work documents, just nodded absently, without even looking properly at his wife. This really upset and saddened Carol. She so wanted to hear a compliment from him, get approval for her choice. For half a year now, John had had serious problems at work. His department was not meeting sales targets, management threatened layoffs, and at home, due to constant stress, he took it out on his wife. Not a day went by without scandals and quarrels. Because of the constant scandals and her husband's bad mood, Carol felt lonely in this marriage. She tried to support her husband as best she could, but sometimes she herself lacked so much his participation, affection, and warmth. Because of this, Carol sometimes cried at night, locking herself in the bathroom so as not to show weakness. On that ill-fated evening, when Carol was getting ready for the corporate party, she and John had a very harsh argument over some triviality. Her husband yelled at her, and Carol ran out of the house, slamming the door, and drove to the party in tears and very upset. At the corporate party, she sat in a corner, refused to dance, and talked little with anyone. After drinking some wine for courage, Carol thawed out a little and even complained to her close colleague about problems in her personal life. But when she began to comfort and pity her, Carol closed up again. She always hated other people's pity, considering it humiliating. But despite the spoiled mood, the evening was a great success. The fun was in full swing. Lively music was playing. Guests were dancing and having fun. Carol watched the scene from the side, watching the elegantly dressed bosses from the head office. And suddenly one of them came up to her table, a tall, handsome man in his 30s with thick, dark hair and bright blue eyes. He introduced himself as Michael and politely struck up a conversation with her. He had impeccable manners, an expensive Italian suit, and a charming smile. Carol immediately felt sympathy for him. They chatted, and Michael turned out to be a witty and interesting conversationalist. And alcohol unleashed Carol's tongue so much that she suddenly asked him directly, "Are you married?" Michael was surprised by this question, but replied that he was single. And then a crazy thought came to Carol's mind: to take revenge on her husband for all the insults and cheat on him with this handsome boss. Carol, inspired by the alcohol she had drunk and the attention of an attractive man, decided to take a desperate step. She offered Michael to join her in a secluded corner, the ladies' restroom of the restaurant. Michael happily agreed to this thrilling adventure. They left the hall quietly so that no one would notice them, and a couple of minutes later, they were already in the spacious restroom. Carol locked the door, and she and Michael passionately embraced, kissing deeply. Their hands eagerly slid over each other's bodies, tearing off and unbuttoning clothes. This insane impulse lasted briefly. After enjoying each other, they hurriedly tittied themselves up and left the restroom as quietly as they had entered. Carol's cheeks were burning, and she felt like she had done something incredible and forbidden. Deep down, she rejoiced in taking revenge on her husband. As Carol rode home late at night in a taxi, her head was filled with conflicting thoughts about what had happened. She sat in the back seat, wearily leaning against the door and staring blankly out the window at the flashing lights of the night city. The taxi smelled of someone else's perfume and tobacco, which made Carol feel nauseous. She nervously fiddled with the strap of her purse, feeling drained and shattered. On the one hand, somewhere deep down, she felt a sense of revenge and spite that she had cheated on her husband. At least this way, she punished him for the constant neglect, humiliating scandals over trivial things, and his disgusting attitude towards her lately. But this bitter joy was short-lived. As the alcoholic haze dissipated, Carol was increasingly overwhelmed by feelings of guilt and shame. She realized that her reckless act had been a terrible mistake that would only bring pain to her and John. Carol felt morally depleted and broken. She was unbearably ashamed of what she had done. When the taxi pulled up, Carol paid and stumbled to the house as if in a fog. At home, she collapsed on the couch in the living room and immediately fell into a troubled sleep. Waking up in the morning to the rays of the sun with a sore head and a nasty taste in her mouth, she was ready to sink through the ground in shame and regret. Opening her eyes a little, Carol saw John standing in the doorway, looking at her with a gaze full of disappointment and sad reproach. Carol sat up with difficulty, feeling that she was still dressed in the crumpled evening dress. The dress had ridden up, exposing her legs, and she realized in horror that she wasn't wearing stockings or underwear. "Well, did you have fun at the corporate party?" John caustically remarked, folding his arms over his chest. "I wonder where your stockings and panties got lost." Carol looked away, unable to withstand his condemning gaze. She realized that in her drunken stupor, she must have forgotten her underwear in the restroom, where she was having fun with Michael. Or he took them with him as a reminder of their affair. Not knowing what to say to her husband, she only pulled the blanket over herself, covering her legs and looking away. John caustically said, "Well, are you going to collect your things yourself, or should I help you?" He was crueler than ever before in all the years of their marriage. John understood perfectly well that her things could not have been lost by themselves. Carol silently sat, staring into space, not daring to say a word. This angered John even more. He began shouting and swearing, trying to pull her off the couch. Unable to bear his insults, Carol suddenly broke into a scream, and tears streamed from her eyes. "Yes, it's all because of you. Because of your disgusting attitude towards me. I'm tired of your scandals and humiliations. Don't you dare kick me out. I'll leave myself." Grabbing her bag, she ran out of the house, and an hour later was riding to a friend's place in a taxi, sobbing in the back seat. This is how the breakdown of their family began. A few days later, she had to return home, to pick up her things, talk to John, and explain. It was a difficult, agonizing conversation, full of bitterness and resentment. John directly said that he would never forgive her for the betrayal and was filing for divorce. Carol could barely hold back her tears, begging for forgiveness, but John was adamant. The last words he said goodbye were, "Yes, it was hard for us recently. We could have gotten through it together. The most important thing is that I loved you like no one else in my life, and you destroyed everything." After the breakup with John, Carol had to quit her job because of the affair rumors. She moved to another city to start over with a clean slate. The first time was very difficult. She had to work odd jobs and rent an apartment in a troubled neighborhood. Carol regretted that she had then given in to an emotional outburst and ruined everything. After all, surely everything could have been different. John decided to radically change his life. He quit his old job and got a job at a dynamic AT company as a sales manager. The new job immersed him in a whirlwind of business trips, meetings, and negotiations. This allowed John to distract himself from experiences and move on. After 6 months, a young specialist, Emma, was hired into their department. She had just graduated from university. She and John worked on projects together as a team, often communicating on work issues. Gradually, their relationship grew into a friendship and then into romantic feelings. John and Emma understood each other without words. Together it was easy, interesting, and comfortable for them. A year later, they decided to get married. So John found marital happiness on his second try with the person he loved, with whom they supported and inspired each other. Their union became truly strong and harmonious. That's the story. Share your thoughts in the comments about this situation and the behavior of the spouses. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and be sure to like this video. It will greatly help promote the channel. Take care and have a wonderful day.